They said it ended decades ago, yet in 2025, Black communities still bleed from invisible wounds. From housing to healthcare, justice to jobs, the system whispers equality but delivers exclusion. This isn't history repeating itself. This is history refusing to leave. Welcome to the truth they won't televise. Welcome to Black Voice USA, where we tell the stories that matter, the real experiences, struggles, and triumphs of Black communities across America. In 2025, racism is not a relic of the past, it's a living, breathing force still shaping lives every day. Join us as we explore how systemic injustice continues to impact Black lives, and how resilience, hope, and power rise in the face of it all. In the heart of a city that never sleeps, the signs of progress cover the walls: diversity slogans, inclusion campaigns, corporate logos in rainbow and brown. But underneath the hashtags, the reality is colder. A young man walks into a job interview, well-dressed, well-prepared, overqualified even. He sits across from someone who smiles politely, listens professionally, and lets him leave with the same old phrase: "We're looking for someone who's a better cultural fit." He doesn't ask what that means anymore. He already knows. In 2025, Black unemployment remains double that of the national average, not because of lack of education or ambition, but because in boardrooms and HR departments across America, bias still wears a business suit. In a crowded classroom in an underfunded school, a Black teacher stands before her students. Her voice is steady, her message urgent. You are not numbers. You are not at risk. You are the future. But the walls around her are cracked, the heat barely works, and the textbooks are older than the students. In America, your zip code still determines your future, and for Black children, that zip code too often comes with broken promises and fewer opportunities. Their schools are policed more than they are supported. Their dreams, too often, shrink to fit their surroundings. At the hospital, a mother pleads for help. Her son is wheezing, lips turning blue, his asthma triggered by the mold in their public housing unit. She's told to wait. Others are taken in before her. Her insurance is questioned. Her concern is dismissed. This isn't a mistake, it's a pattern. In 2025, Black Americans are more likely to suffer and die from preventable diseases. Not because they're careless, but because the system doesn't hear them until it's too late. From childbirth to emergency care, racism remains embedded in medicine, not in the textbooks, but in the treatment. In a courtroom across town, two teenagers are tried for the same crime. One walks out with probation, the other with a prison sentence. The difference? Their skin. The judge doesn't say it outright. He doesn't have to. In the United States, justice isn't blind. It just closes its eyes when the defendant is Black. The numbers haven't changed in years. Black men still serve longer sentences for the same crimes. Black children are still tried as adults. And the prison system? Still booming business. Sometimes the wounds don't bleed, they just bruise the soul. A Black woman walks into her office. She's greeted with smiles and compliments that feel like stabs. "Your hair is so bold today. You're so articulate. You don't sound Black at all." Microaggressions, they call them. Small cuts that never quite heal. She laughs politely, but inside, she's tired. It's not the job that drains her. It's the quiet racism that hides behind smiles and open-plan desks. Outside, the streets are filled again. Not with parades or celebration, but with rage, with grief, with people demanding to be seen. Signs rise above the crowd. "I am not a threat." Say their names. Black lives still matter. They chant not for attention, but for survival. Peaceful protests met with tear gas. Raised hands met with raised guns. They are told to protest the right way, but every way they choose is met with silence, with suppression, with spin. And yet, there is light. In the midst of injustice, Black communities continue to rise. A young girl launches her own app to help low-income families access free mental health care. A father opens a neighborhood food co-op in a former liquor store. Teachers, artists, nurses, coders, all creating spaces where systems once failed. They are not waiting for permission anymore. They are not waiting to be saved. They are saving each other. This is not just a story of pain. It's a story of power, of people who refuse to disappear, who fight not just for freedom, but for dignity, for joy, for future generations who will not grow up thinking this is normal. Racism in 2025 isn't always loud. It's not always obvious. It's not always burning crosses and shouted slurs. Sometimes it's in the silence of a boardroom, the waiting time in an emergency room, the lowered expectations of a teacher, the raised eyebrow in a store. It's subtle, it's strategic, and it's still here. A young couple stands in front of a real estate office. Their credit is solid, their income is stable, but every home they inquire about mysteriously goes off the market. They're told it's under contract or it's been taken, but they know the truth. The neighbor said it, the stairs said it. The system just didn't have to say it out loud. Redlining might not be on paper anymore, but it lives in whispers, in delays, in invisible doors that quietly close before you can even knock. In 2025, home ownership remains a dream deferred for far too many Black families, not by accident, but by quiet, persistent exclusion. In another part of the country, a Black trans woman walks alone after work. She clutches her keys, heart pounding. She knows the statistics. She knows her identity makes her a target twice over. A car slows down behind her. She walks faster. It's not just the threat of violence. It's the guarantee that if something happens, the system might not protect her, might not investigate, might not care. Black lives are not just under threat by individuals, but by institutions that decide which lives are worth fighting for, and which are not. In a tech conference, a young Black coder presents her app. It's clean, innovative, solution-focused. The panel nods, says her work is interesting, but gives the funding to another team, less diverse, less prepared. She smiles and thanks them anyway. She's used to it. Black women in tech are over-mentored and underfunded. They're told to lean in, but the seat at the table is already taken, and the table was never built with them in mind. Elsewhere, a grandmother scrolls through her phone, video after video. Another police shooting, another arrest, another child gone. Her thumb hesitates, her eyes fill with tears. She thought things would be different by now. She marched in the 60s, she voted, she believed. But the only thing that's changed is the clarity. In 2025, the violence is still here. It's just better filmed. And yet, for every moment of injustice, there is a moment of resistance. In kitchens and classrooms, on basketball courts and block parties, Black joy thrives like a flower breaking through concrete. It is loud, it is unashamed, it is revolutionary. A group of high schoolers gather after school, starting a podcast about mental health in Black communities. They speak openly about trauma, about therapy, about not being okay. Their voices are raw, their truths are unfiltered, and their courage is contagious. Where generations were taught to be strong and silent, these teams are learning to be strong and vulnerable, to say, "I need help" without shame, to heal out loud. In a small southern town, a Black farmer builds a cooperative that feeds 5 neighborhoods. He teaches kids how to grow food, how to own land, how to build something that can't be taken. He knows that economic justice isn't just about jobs, it's about ownership, access, and control. He doesn't wait for politicians. He plants seeds now, literally and figuratively. At a university, a professor teaches African American history, not just the pain, but the brilliance, the inventions, the music, the philosophies, the resistance. His students sit in silence, stunned that they never learned this in high school, because they weren't meant to. Erasure isn't always burning books. It's never putting them on the shelf to begin with. And yet, truth finds its way through voices that refuse to be erased. Meanwhile, online, a Black mother speaks to the camera. She's not an influencer. She's not trying to go viral. She's just tired. Tired of explaining to her children why they have to be careful, why they have to say yes sir and no ma'am with a certain tone, why they have to smile when they're scared. She says, "I shouldn't have to teach my 8-year-old how not to die." And millions feel her pain, because her words echo in homes across the country. In 2025, racism doesn't always scream. It often whispers. It doesn't always burn crosses. Sometimes it just closes doors, deletes emails, denies loans. It smiles in your face and blocks your name. It's in the algorithm, in the zoning map, in the insurance rate. It's subtle, surgical, and sustained. But it's not stronger than the people it tries to break. In barbershops, people still debate politics and laugh louder than the news would have you believe. In churches and mosques, communities still gather, not just for faith, but for food, for help, for hope. In art galleries, Black painters capture pain and power on canvas. In music studios, rappers turn struggle into sound. In every corner of the country, Black people are not just surviving, they are building, creating, healing, and rising. A young boy stands in front of a mural of Malcolm, Martin, and Maya. He asks his father, "Will it ever really change?" His father pauses, then kneels. "Yes, because we're still here, and we're not done." This isn't a sad story, it's an honest one. And honesty is the first step toward change. The kind of change that isn't just symbolic, not just surface, but structural. That means reimagining education, not just reforming it. That means funding healthcare like our lives depend on it, because they do. That means electing leaders who listen and removing the ones who perform. That means changing not just policy, but culture. It also means asking hard questions. What does equity really look like? Who's being left behind while others move forward? What does justice mean when trust is broken? Who's rewriting the narrative, and who's still missing from the page? Racism in 2025 is not the ghost of America's past, it's the shadow of its present. But shadows only exist when there's light. And Black communities, we are the light. We are the authors of our own stories, the architects of our futures. We are not waiting to be included. We're building our own tables, our own platforms, our own power. And we're not asking for permission anymore. This is not about guilt. It's about truth. This is not an attack. It's a mirror. And if you can see the reflection, maybe, just maybe, you can be part of the change. Because change doesn't start in Washington. It starts at your dinner table, your classroom, your company, your community. It starts when you stop pretending the problem is over. It starts when you choose to listen, really listen. To the mother afraid for her son. To the student who's never seen herself in a textbook. To the father turned away from a bank. To the child who already knows they'll be treated differently. To the joy that exists even when the world doesn't make room for it. To the voices that have been speaking for centuries and are only now being heard. This is Black Voice USA, and this is the truth in 2025. Black lives still matter. Black futures always will. Beyond the headlines and the protests, the story of Black America in 2025 is also a story of family, generations bound by hope and heartbreak, resilience and resistance. Grandparents share stories of struggle that feel like both history and prophecy. They remind younger generations of the battles fought before them, not to scare them, but to prepare them. The weight of legacy is heavy, but it is also a shield. It teaches that survival is more than endurance. It is a kind of strength that refuses to break, even when the world seems determined to crack you open. At kitchen tables across the country, families gather not just to eat, but to strategize. How to keep children safe, how to talk about the police, how to explain a world that often treats Black bodies like collateral damage. These conversations are raw, sometimes painful, but they are acts of love. Parents and guardians pass on wisdom, sometimes cautious, sometimes defiant, because the truth is, protection is as much about knowledge as it is about shelter. In neighborhoods where resources are scarce, and hope even scarcer, faith communities play an outsized role. Churches, mosques, and temples aren't just places of worship. They are hubs of activism, education, and healing. They provide food banks, counseling, and legal aid. They are where people come to find strength when the outside world refuses to give it. The sermons speak not only of salvation but of justice. The songs echo with the pain of the past and the promise of a better future. Still, the challenges are real and relentless. Black-owned businesses struggle to access capital and markets. Financial institutions, whether through outright discrimination or systemic neglect, make it harder for Black entrepreneurs to thrive. The promise of economic empowerment is often a mirage, shimmering just out of reach. But despite this, Black business owners persevere. They innovate, collaborate, and invest in their communities. Every small success is a victory against a system designed to keep them small. Mental health remains a silent crisis. Generations have been told to be strong, to bear the burden alone, to keep faith. But trauma, individual and collective, accumulates. Anxiety, depression, PTSD, these are realities that many live with but few talk about openly. Thankfully, there's a growing movement to break the stigma, to encourage therapy, and to build support networks within Black communities. Healing is no longer seen as weakness, but as revolutionary self-care. Education continues to be a battleground. Despite landmark court cases and policy reforms, disparities remain stark. Students in predominantly Black schools often face overcrowding, outdated materials, and underpaid teachers. Yet these schools are also places of innovation and hope. Educators are redefining curricula to include Black history, culture, and contributions that were erased from mainstream textbooks. They are teaching critical thinking and civic engagement, preparing students not just to survive, but to lead. The arts and culture scene offers another powerful form of resistance. Black filmmakers, writers, musicians, and visual artists use their platforms to challenge stereotypes and tell authentic stories. From independent films that expose the realities of systemic racism to music that uplifts and energizes, creativity is both a refuge and a weapon. Art is a way to reclaim identity, rewrite history, and envision new futures. Technology, too, presents both challenges and opportunities. Algorithms can perpetuate bias, from facial recognition failures to skewed credit scoring. But Black innovators are pushing back, creating apps and platforms that serve their communities. From telehealth services tailored to Black patients to social media movements that amplify Black voices, technology becomes a tool for empowerment rather than exclusion. Politics remains fraught but vital. Voter suppression efforts continue to threaten access to the ballot box, often targeting Black voters with purges, restrictive ID laws, and reduced polling places. Yet, activism is fierce and strategic. Grassroots organizations mobilize voters, educate communities, and hold elected officials accountable. The fight for representation at the local, state, and federal levels is ongoing, with Black leaders rising to power and demanding real change. Media representation also shapes perceptions and realities. When Black stories are told through white lenses or omitted altogether, the impact is profound, fueling misunderstanding and prejudice. But more Black creators and journalists are claiming space, telling stories with nuance and complexity. This shift helps dismantle stereotypes and humanizes experiences that have long been marginalized. All of this unfolds amid a backdrop of growing awareness and solidarity. Allyship has evolved beyond performative gestures to calls for concrete action. More people recognize that racism is not just a Black problem, it's an American problem, a human problem. And dismantling it requires courage, education, and commitment from all. Still, fatigue runs deep. The daily grind of navigating systemic barriers takes a toll. But what sustains Black communities is something deeper than hope. It's a fierce determination to live fully, to love fiercely, and to claim joy unapologetically. This joy is revolutionary. It defies the odds and reclaims what racism tried to steal. It is seen in laughter at family reunions, in the beauty of natural hair, in celebrations of culture and heritage. This joy, this resistance, this love, these are the threads weaving a new narrative for Black America, one where the scars of 2025 are acknowledged but not allowed to define the future, where struggle and success coexist, where the fight for justice is met with the power of community. And so, the story continues. Not as victims, but as victors. Not as silenced, but as speakers. Not as passive observers, but as active creators of a more just and equitable world. This is Black Voice USA. This is our truth. This is our fight. This is our future. Black lives still matter. Black futures always will. Thank you for watching Black Voice USA. The fight against racism is far from over, but our stories, our voices, and our futures will never be silenced. Stay informed, stay empowered, and keep standing for justice. Because Black lives still matter, and together we will build a future where they always will.